Welcome everyone to this week's episode of Unscripted by FAQ Health. I'm your host Ubongi Ndlovu from the Better Health Group. And as always, we are here bringing you real voices, raw moments, and chatting to people who are on the ground, making sure that we're working together to rethink health. So today's guest, I'm very excited to have her with me. Her name is Siba. I think I'm so excited to have today's episode because we're going to be deep diving on a personally matter that touches me as a mother of a boy child, but we're going to look at what does healing look like for men who never learned to cry. But yeah, today's guest, I'm excited to have her and speak to her. But before we continue, Siba, I'd like to hand over to you just to introduce yourself and let us know what it is exactly that you do.
Sure. Firstly, I'd like to say thank you for having me on, Bongi. It's such an honor and a pleasure.
Thank
I
you.
love conversations like these. So, as you touched on slightly in the beginning, my name is Siba Sismani, and I'm the Group CEO of Unorthodox Group. So, Unorthodox Group is a holding company, and it's got two subsidiaries under it. Unorthodox PR, where we focus on corporate public relations. Within that, we specialize in media relations. So, we've done work and currently do work in Southern Africa, West Africa, the US, and the UK. And then our second subsidiary, which is Unorthodox Sport, our baby, we started it close to 5 years ago, and we started it off by managing professional athletes, purely from an endorsement and commercials perspective. But we've gone on to have sports teams and securing sponsorship for them, your sporting events, equivalent to your World Cups in different sporting codes. And then we also assist government and corporate with their sports strategy. So we've expanded on that a lot over the years.
Yes, I think that's just so amazing because one of the things that caught our eye and many people would be like, but how does a sexual and reproductive or a health organization fits in with a PR conversation? With us, we are just trying to see how we can use public relations as a tool for healing, you know? And I think one of the work that, as you more specifically are talking about men who have never learned to cry, are there instances where you see or opportunities where we can link the public relations, communications work with healing as a tool?
So what I've noticed in South Africa ever since we've been in PR now for close to about 11 years is that we don't take PR seriously enough in South Africa. PR can be used in sports, it can be used in government, it can be used in health. And we've actually had multiple clients in the past also speaking about health and wellness, everything just around health, and we've had clients before because we've realized that in that space there's a lot of misinformation, and maybe there's a lot of information that's not necessarily palatable to the intended target audience. So public relations, it takes almost that jargon that would be used in a very highly specialized health space, and it makes it palatable to their audience, which is probably a lot of the times quite a bigger reach in South Africa. I mean, for us, we had a lot of work during lockdown, during COVID, because we had to ensure that we were communicating on behalf of our client, or actually making the information palatable, which ended up saving lives. So PR has a huge role to play, especially in the health space, considering also that South Africa is a developing country. So we still have a lot of the health and foundational problems that maybe the developed sort of countries maybe do not have. And a lot of those, awareness of that information can actually lead to saving a lot of people's lives.
And I think what you're touching on now is at the core of who we are as FAQ Health, because what we initially saw when we did traditionally the workshops, the condom distribution programs, is that quite a lot of work has been done by service providers to ensure that, unlike any other African country, I think South Africa is a great model because when we talk about healthcare systems, interventions, programs that are out there, they're there. But on the stark contrast, you still have young people and having STI or preventable sexually transmitted diseases, even though the interventions are there. So then you see that the gap is no longer access in terms of the services, but more of a personal lifestyle, making the choice to, or seeing healthcare as more preventative care than sick care, you know? And I think the main opportunity that we have there, because we also see how PR and branding and marketing targets younger audiences in terms of brands, whether it's fashion, whether it's music, whether it's popular culture.
Correct.
And just the missing part of it of how do we harness that when you talk about healthy lifestyle issues as well, or branding healthy lifestyle as a brand that is palatable for young people. Is there an opportunity, or can you share a past experience where a narrative shift or a PR storytelling really assisted in changing the way people saw their struggles or their healing journey?
So, there are quite a few. So I don't know which one to take out, but what I've seen and the role of public relations and how important it is that it helps also with clients know what's on the ground. So we were having a conversation earlier saying that there used to be workshops, more face-to-face workshops years and years ago, but that doesn't work, especially with COVID. You know, we don't do a lot of physical meetings. So we tend to stay away from that. But if you look at the target audience, they're very much online. So Africa has the youngest population. Obviously, South Africa being part of that also has the youngest population. So it's quite important to note how they consume information and where they consume information. So part of the work that we have actually done and what we're realizing is that we don't have a Gen Z model as of yet. I think even globally, we don't quite have a Gen Z model where we understand the Gen Zs because they are the consumers. And that's especially important for Africa because a lot of human capital is going to be taken from Africa because in Europe, it's a slightly aging population. So I would say one of the case studies and what we're doing now with corporates is them trying to understand Gen Z and how to convert Gen Z obviously into customers if it's that kind of business, whether it's services or goods, or in your case where it would be creating awareness around health matters and health issues. So that's where we currently are right now. That's what we're seeing the role of. So in a sense, PR helps you sense check what is on the ground so that we make sure that we keep to our core service, which is communicating. The how and the when depends on the audience and who you want to impact and how you want to impact them as well, and also how to measure.
Yeah, I think the measuring part is also very important. I think now if we could just unpack in particularly working with men. I think much of your work and advocacy spotlights men in sports, culture and leadership. Why is it important to focus on men's stories in particular?
Yeah, so that's interesting because I think even as a woman in business, as an entrepreneur, you tend to realize that men sign the checks, right? Not just focusing on sport because that's a previously still male-dominated industry. But before we even touch on that, just entrepreneurship in itself is still very much male-dominated. Whether you're looking at other entrepreneurs or you are looking at the people who sign the checks. So it's quite important to know the psyche and understand men. And it's important for women to also be in those conversations to ensure that, there's a bit of sensitivity around women and women entrepreneurs, then certain things are raised and, if strategies need to change to accommodate women, if the whole room needs to shift to accommodate women, that's what needs to happen. And that's why it's so important for women to be in positions of power and power and also be in decision making. So from a business sense, that in itself, I've worked with men. I predominantly work with men in the sense that, our clients and the people that sign off the checks just in general. And now when it comes to sport, we work with very high functioning individuals. And for them, their mental health is important in the sense that they do a lot of physical training, but then also with sport and to operate optimally, you have to have discipline, you have to have consistency. So there's a lot of mental strength that goes into it. But especially in the space that we play, which is rugby, there's been a lot of transformation over the years. And actually, looking after their mental health is something that's really important. Because with some of the players of color, anyone can read up on their South African stories. They came from very poor backgrounds. And now you shot into the spotlight and now you're earning quite a lot and there's a lot of attention on you. But what I've seen is that there's always that gap when it comes to, someone talking to them about their mental health, or them voluntarily saying that I think I may need to take on the service.
True.
Which is actually, funny enough, one of the services that we're now looking into for our expansion plan, to not just get commercial deals for athletes, but actually to have a database of therapists or psychologists that they need to work with, all the way down to lawyers. But we found that that's actually important. Over the past years, I mean, if you followed South African sports, especially on the rugby side, there's been a lot that's happening. And we are not looking at the actual causes. We're curing symptoms, but what is the root cause?
Sure.
And in a lot of that, it is mental health issues that were never dealt with. So that's been interesting, and that's quite important for, I think, the male athletes to have a look at, because they are also role models. So how do you advise someone in a holistic manner, because they have so many young kids and also adults that look up to them, and they take their advice very highly, but how do you advise on a holistic level if you yourself are not getting that holistic care
and support
and
as well.
support? Exactly.
Yeah, no, I think that is very admirable, because also what we see, even from whatever interventions are available from childhood age, it's more always often than not women or girl child focused, and that is where I think that most, even young boys fall through the cracks, and then that is then the same young boy that becomes the athlete, and you're now dealing with a whole lot of issues and psychosocial issues that were impacted from a young age. So we also always, as FAQ Health, try and see how we can chip in men's issues, because men's issues are women's issues, you know, because at the end of the day, they affect us one way or the other. So that is very impressive, Uguchi, you were able to see that dish and also just provide that gap, fill in that gap, because there's definitely a need. And then from your experience, what do you think are some of the biggest barriers when it comes to what prevents men from being open about their pain or vulnerability or their needs, as you were saying, when you talk about mental health needs?
I do think in a South African, possibly also African if we're looking at the whole continent, but I grew up in South Africa, so I can't weigh in, but obviously by virtue of living in Johannesburg, you're exposed to quite a number of nationalities. But there have been so many detrimental narratives. We've heard the black men or men aren't meant to cry. You don't share stuff with your partner or your spouse. Financially, a lot of the burden is on them, and they feel like they can't even share that with their partners, which is a lot of very negative narratives that were pushed in the past. Hence, we're seeing, I think recently there was a survey that was released that men have the highest suicide rates because they don't talk openly about that, or the environments don't support them or allow them to be vulnerable. Because at the end of the day, we're all human. We wear our masks when we're on the field, we wear our masks when we attend meetings, but we need that space where we can be vulnerable and be ourselves. And I think from my observation, I'm not a mental health expert, but from my observation, there are still those very negative narratives that a lot of men are brought up with. And also, if you bring it into the South African context, there's also, a lack of a male figure in the household. It's actually statistically proven. So
True.
this is not from the top of my head. So where are these men getting guidance in terms of, being a man? Yeah, I don't want to go too much into that, because I've had very in-depth conversations, but historically I think there are a lot of issues that now are resulting in men still feeling as though they can't seek the help, or they can't express how they feel. And then a lot of the times, unfortunately, that leads to suicide.
True. And I think also what is important to note is how the cycle is perpetuating, because now we have an even younger generation of men with a high unemployment rate than before, with different set of struggles, different set of access. We might have the information and the internet, but if you don't have the opportunities, then a different depression model that most older men don't identify with, So I also just think that the up and coming Gen Z men have their own societal issues that are not being catered for. So do you think that telling men's stories differently can help change how society approaches issues like mental health and masculinity?
No, definitely. Because what I've been seeing is, I was actually having a chat with my colleague earlier about how I love being around older women that have never been married and don't have kids, and they live happy lives. And we see that in a lot of our icons on Instagram. We see that a lot of on TV networks. We also see women that are divorced and have kids, or divorced or don't have kids, and they're still happy and they're still very much dating. We also see women that are married, have kids, have a great support structure, have careers. We also see women that are housewives as well, that are happy. So in as much as I think we've done a good job with that, men need to be portrayed in the same light. That you can be different versions of men. It doesn't take away anything from you becoming a man, but those different versions and expressing and showing the different versions of how men can be, or how they can authentically show up and be themselves is also okay. So that messaging and just that is so important. Those visuals are so important.
Yeah, I agree. And I think we were also talking with the content team a few months back about how there's so few shows about just men. We're talking about adulting and say, okay, that's like one of the shows that shows the bros life, but Nakona, you can see the innuendos and the messaging. But what are other shows that men can see themselves and what to aspire to outside of what's available or not available in the household, or even in the community? I think the next part of it, I would like to talk more about the African strategy and reach. I'd also like to know if, since you're not only working as an unorthodox PR in South Africa only, but also in other African countries, have you seen, or what are your experiences from the different cultural contexts that affect either your work within PR and communications or your work within men and managing cultural leaders or sports leaders as well?
So on the sports side, we haven't done work with athletes, I would say, outside of South Africa, still within Africa. What we have done work with is a lot of our corporate clients.
Okay.
But a very funny story, we had a client who was expanding into our neighboring countries. And my client, and I was supposed to accompany them to a meeting outside of South Africa, still within the SADC region. And my client sat me down and he said, Siba, you can't come to this meeting. So I asked why. I always come with to important meetings because no one's going to give my presentation like I can. And he said to me, you will be catcalled. Yes, there's catcalling in South Africa, but it's worse there. And in the boardroom, you will be kicked out because you're a woman. And no one is going to listen to what you have to say, because my client, who's a man, was saying that there's no other woman in there besides the woman that makes the tea and the coffee. So, in South Africa, I think we've...
2020 something.
I'm trying to, maybe 2022, or it was around 2020, 2023. Yes, we were allowed to travel around that time. So that's what my client said to me, that we will give you feedback. You won't even join in virtually, because once you start speaking as a woman to who they were meeting with was men in the boardroom, no one will hear you because you are a woman.
Yeah, I understand that the different cultural, and for us, for me, when I travel, it's just always such a culture shock, because you go in there like, hi, and then you just get overlooked to if there's a guy behind you that you're working with, or even a colleague, So how do you handle those different contextual differences or cultural differences within the workspace?
I think it's understanding for me what every cultural group that you step into, how they do things. I think it's very important. Some battles we can't win, to be quite honest, and some battles are not even worth our time.
Yeah, true.
They're really not worth our time. If you know that you're a fully capable woman, still go into that meeting. If you don't have warnings, like my client gave me, still go to that meeting. Do what you have to do. At the end of the day, people can't ignore the value that you're bringing to the table, and they also can't take away your qualifications and your wealth of knowledge and experience.
True.
And even if they feel some type of way because you're a woman, they know they can't avoid that.
Yeah.
I mean, I've been in situations where even if we look at race, right, where I work in a predominantly very white male dominated space when it comes to sport, when it comes to rugby, and there are those moments where I've had to face those challenges where you come in and you're completely overlooked, but by the end of that meeting, they are the ones following up with you now, because they understand that you bring a value that they don't have. And that's what it's all about, being able to have vast demographics on the decision-making table so that everyone is represented well. so that it's not skewed to either males, because it's not just males in the world. It's not just women in it. It's not just, Tsongas. It's not just Yorubas. So that diversity is so important, so that people's voices can be heard and also our cultures can be seen in a workspace.
Yeah, I think also just the addition of culture is a big one. When you talk about a strategic lens, what's the key to gaining trust and visibility that resonates like within these special markets, if I can put it like that?
From a business sense. So with us, within every market that we go into, even if we're talking about a South African context, if we're doing work in Mpumalanga, or if we're doing work in the Eastern Cape, okay, I'm from the Eastern Cape, or if you're doing work anywhere really, we always try to work with the locals in that area.
Okay.
Because number one, there might be a language barrier. Even though I may understand the language, it'll never be on par with people that are locals there, but also the culture of it. So maybe I'm from the Eastern Cape, but I've lived in Joburg for a very long time, more than 10 years. So I've adopted to the culture. So for me, it's not a big deal wearing pants. But you'd find that there are some parts still in the Eastern Cape where I'm from, where, if I'm wearing pants, why am I wearing pants? Or, you go to different parts of the country, like maybe a Limpopo. So it's so important to understand and also be very mindful and respectful. I know that we're a modern society, but I think it's also very important to respect people's cultures. And no one, like a person who's lived in that area for a long time, can help you understand the demographics and also make it more palatable. Because I think that as a bystander or as an outsider, you might feel offended, but when you actually get to embrace and you understand someone's culture, which I think this is something that you can expand anyway, even outside of South Africa, within the continent, even in Europe, parts of France, or whether you in London, it's so important to partner up with people that are in that area when you do work, so that you understand that we all come with our own ways of doing things.
Yeah, that is true. That is true. And I think in terms of the opportunities that are available, what opportunities do you see for cross-country storytelling or campaigns that resonates beyond one cultural context?
What I've found is that I think as a people, we actually enjoy learning, and we enjoy learning about different cultures. So that's why storytelling is important. I mean, in South Africa now, we just had a series. I don't want to give them a shout out. No free PR. But a series that was based on the Zulu culture, and there was a lot of debate around it. But it's the mere fact that debate then led to accurate information coming out. And those are things that we didn't know about the Zulu culture. So for instance, also there was a big Zulu debate about the Americans. I think they had some Zulu tour. And then South Africans were saying, no, that's actually not our culture. You don't portray our culture. And then it turned from a debate to actually an opportunity to learn. And for me, that's really amazing. That kind of storytelling for me is so important. So I think there is definitely a curiosity about different cultures, and more South Africans are traveling, yay. Yeah. But I think people...
It's nice also, because I remember when I was in Berlin the last time the Springboks were playing, and then I just put in notes, guys, where are South Africans? I can't watch this alone. And then there was literally like 20, 30 South Africans there, where we were able to, like, oh, okay, this is nice. We are everywhere.
We are everywhere. We
like
really
little
are.
communities of, yeah.
We are everywhere. And I think, for me, it's always exciting whenever I travel. I don't want to go to the touristy stuff. I want to find out, how do the locals live? I'll make sure that I learn how to say, hi, how are you? My name is, can I please have thank you? Just the basics. And you see how, when you speak someone's language, how their face lights up, especially when you don't look like them, or they've never seen anyone like you, because there are parts of the world where, they've never seen a black person. Or it's still very fascinating. So people always want to learn. I think the knowledge and the thirst is there. And hopefully we can invest more of that content, like on-the-go content, digital content, where people can consume and just learn more about different cultures.
Yeah, true. I think in closing, when we look at partnerships and the future vision, how can organizations like us as FAQ Health harness PR principles to just better reach young people with messaging on prevention when we talk about health?
Oh, that's an interesting one. I think firstly, young people want to see people that look like themselves. As mentioned earlier, less jargon, more palatable information in a language that they understand, coming to their level and not being too high level, because now it sounds like you're preaching.
True.
And I mean, even for me, I feel like you're preaching, I'm not going to be
checked out fast.
Checked out very fast. So I think those dynamics are important, but also just understanding how do they consume information, how do they prefer to consume information. So the younger audience right now baffles a lot of the millennials.
True. True.
And generations before the millennials, but it's
Yeah.
because we're not understanding. And I still think that we're finding our balance quite a bit. But in finding the balance, I think there's a lot that the different generations can learn from each other.
True.
But with the younger generation, we definitely need to find out how they consume information, because they do. They are also very curious. They're also a lot more vocal and a lot more active. So how do we tap into that passion that they have, but also just how do we communicate things in a language they understand? And then that's going to lead to a partnership more than anything, which was raised earlier, because we really do need to have a partnership.
And I think that just mindset shift to say we want to do things for them or versus we want to partner with them is what creates that sense of belonging or them feeling part of the vision rather than, just people who are getting assistance. So if you were to imagine what the future looks like for healing for men as well, what do you see in that space, or what would you like to see in that space?
I would like to see safer spaces for men.
I agree.
Within each other more than anything. Be able to be vulnerable with each other. Because what I have seen as well with working not just with male clients, but just working in business in general, is that a man will possibly find it easier to confide in a woman than in their own circle of friends. So there's also that dynamic that even within their own circle of friends, they feel like they have to show up like a macho man. But then what is the point of friendship?
It's the mankind.
What is the point of brotherhood then? Whereas with us women, I know that if I want to have a good cry, I can call Bongi. By the time I get to Bongi's house, she's going to have my favorite drinks, my favorite snacks, and I can just lay on the floor and put my title group CEO aside. So I know that it is currently happening with some groups of men, but I'd like for that to be a norm, that they feel safe within their own spaces. Because no one understands a man like a man understands a man. Like with women, no one understands women like other women. We know our struggles. We know how we think, right down to our physicality, our bodies. We know how our bodies function. So we're able to be a bit more sympathetic and empathetic to our struggles.
Yeah, I think that's a very important point. I think just one last question in closing. If you think of 10-year-old Siba and what your dreams were back then, what do you think that 10-year-old Siba would say to you right now in the work that you're doing?
And she'd ask, ma'am, how did we get here? I wanted to be a dancer when I was 10 years old.
Okay.
But again, lack of representation. I never saw any black woman making money. And I was also very cognizant of money because I didn't come from a lot of money. So when I was 10, I knew that there were certain things that I could not get because we could not afford it at home. And I wanted to grow up to be that adult that can afford everything that I want to. So I wanted to be a dancer. I was very good at it. I used to do ballet, contemporary, but I never saw black women who looked like me that were dancers. But then I also didn't see dancers that were making money. So for me, I shut that down. My vision was always that I wanted to be in a big corporate office on the top floor, making a lot of money. The who and the how, I don't know. But then somehow that vision sort of manifested to where I am now. So I think she'd be very, very proud of me. She'd give me a hug, I think.
That is always great. And I think I just wanted to also just thank you for joining us at Unscripted by FAQ, and also just sharing your passion and the work that you're doing. I think it's much needed. And I also think that we are sort of opening a new trail where we're seeing how can we really start using PR for more positive impact, whether it is in the business world, because that is also still vital, but also in everyday community lives as well. So thank you so much for sharing your time with us and being with us. And I think just in closing, thank you also for joining us. And if this conversation touched you, make sure that you share and leave a comment on the side. It's Bongindlovu from FAQ Health. Stay fucking healthy. Done.
Yeah, stay
Yeah,
fucking
fucking
healthy. Hey!